Welcome to our video to compare the changes made to Workshop 1 for CSP between last year 1819 to this year 1920. At a high level, the changes involve adding a model lesson and removing TTLs. We also only focus on content from Unit 3 during this workshop versus last year where we focused on content from Units 1 and 2. These changes overall lead to more of a focus on developing teaching strategies around formative assessment and developing student skills with debugging. In this video, we are going to walk through each session and look at how it changed from last year. We're starting with our workshop opener, which remains similar to how it looked last year. However, we've added some time here where teachers can ask questions about Unit 1 or 2, which they should currently be teaching, but also we have no other time dedicated to Units 1 and 2 throughout the rest of the agenda. So we want to provide specific time here for teachers to raise those questions. Also, since we'll be doing a model lesson, we've added this session to remind teachers of what they saw in Unit 3 during the summer workshop. This previously on Unit 3 session reminds teachers that they saw two different lessons from Unit 3, including the Using Simple Commands lesson, which was their first time in App Lab. In that lesson, teachers created a 3x3 grid using lots of lines of code to accomplish their task. This sets up the model lesson for after the break. The model lesson takes the place of TTLs. We cut this time a bit shorter since we're only looking at one lesson during the model lesson instead of 3 or 4 from last year. We use those 25 minutes we cut out here in the afternoon where teachers investigate additional lessons. In the lesson agenda itself, or in the session agenda itself, you will see strategies that we're asking to be modeled in the model lesson. These strategies include asking probing questions, pausing for formative assessment at key points, using pair programming, and building a classroom culture around debugging. Again, in the agenda itself, it gives you specific questions you can ask and specific things you can do to accomplish these strategies. These strategies are referred throughout the rest of the day, which is why it's important that they're modeled here. After the model lesson, we have a session for reflection. So we're replacing that TTL Q&A time with time for teachers to pull out things they saw from that model lesson, specifically those 4 strategies: asking probing questions, pausing for formative assessment, using pair programming, and building a classroom culture around debugging, which is why it's important that as a facilitator, you model those strongly in the model lesson. After that, we've added a debugging session. The curriculum team has done some work around being clear about what the role is of teachers and students in debugging and what specific skills are being developed with students when they debug. This session gives teachers a chance to review those resources and get concrete about how they will build debugging skills with their students. After lunch, teachers are using some time from the jigsaw to do what we're calling a curriculum investigation. Similar to the jigsaw from last year, the session allows teachers to dig into multiple lessons. In this session, teachers look at 2 different lessons from Unit 3, specifically the lessons that follow from that model lesson. This gives teachers a better understanding of the unit as a whole. Unlike the jigsaw from last year, this time is a bit more directive. We ask teachers to look at specific lessons and specific bubbles in those lessons. These are chosen intentionally for their connections to prior content and future content. And in this session, we ask teachers to not only look at the what of the lesson, but the how they're going to incorporate those strategies they saw in the morning in these lessons when they teach it. So how will they ask probing questions? What questions will they ask? When will they pause for formative assessment? Will they use pair programming or not? How will they build a classroom culture around debugging in each of these lessons? We've also added this time for Unit 3 conclusions and connections. So after teachers have dug into lessons themselves, we show teachers at a high level what they did not see in the unit. This involves looking at what content is covered after Lesson 7 and how parts of this unit connect to the create task. Again, here teachers get an opportunity to think about how they would apply the teaching strategies they saw in the morning to these lessons. Our last big session of the day is the classroom counseling scenario session, which remains very much the same. Teachers get a scenario of a reluctant CS student and then speed date with other teachers so they can hear how teachers would respond to that student. We end the day with our traditional wrap-up. This remains the same from last year. Again, teachers have time to clear out the question parking lot, get their last minute questions answered, and also take the survey. That concludes our Workshop 1 comparison video. On the agenda overview page, you'll find additional resources about the content covered in Workshop 1 and how to address equity in Workshop 1. You can also use the facilitator Slack channel to ask questions directly.